Have no fear of missing out.
The show's about FOMO. Your host is Brian Fanzo. He'll tell you what you don't know. And now, your host, Social Fans.
Welcome back to another episode of FOMO Fans. My name is Brian Fanzo, better known as Social Fans, and you guys are listening to episode number 52. And as I promised on the end of episode 51, I'd get back to recording these live on Facebook Live, which I am doing right now. So thank you everybody that's watching here live, the live broadcast on a Monday. It is a Columbus Day, and I don't know about you guys, but the only reason I ever really knew Columbus Day was, growing up, it was a day I got off of school. But I think once I got out of school, I graduated high school and college. I don't even think I got it off in college, but once I graduated high school, I think I no longer cared about Columbus Day. Columbus Day wasn't a day on my radar. So maybe if you have kids that you're remembering and aware of the day being Columbus Day. But I'm broadcasting live from my new studio here in Manassas, Virginia. So I couldn't be more excited about having a new place to broadcast. The studio isn't fully set up now, but I did get enough set up to get the lights, the table, the desk, as well as the podcasting microphone set up. And it's been a crazy couple weeks for me. For those of you that have been following me on the other social channels, I've been I was in Chicago working with HP. I got to go down and speak at an event with Dell. I then went and spoke at an event in Las Vegas called Sheridan Insights, where it's an HR technology conference about the millennial mindset. And so I've been busy to say the least. And busy would be an understatement, but I just posted on Instagram that chaos is the new normal. And if I believe that, then there's no reason for me to complain about being too busy or having things too much going on, because there's no such thing as really too busy. You get to decide what your priorities are and how you make things work. So, I wanted to talk a little bit about, a question that I get a lot, and I get it in many different ways, and I get it in different formats, and I think it's because I talk a lot with my shows and my keynotes about living in this digital world, and the digital world we live in being full of distractions. I always use the example that my grandfather growing up in Pittsburgh always said he had two ways to get his news. Or three ways, I guess, he got his news: from the newspaper, from my grandmother, or from the TV, which he only had one channel, or maybe he had three channels, but since he didn't have a remote control, he only called it one channel. And in the world we live in today, we are distracted by everything and anything. I'm very open the fact that I have ADHD, but even if you don't have ADHD, there's 30 apps on your phone that give you news. There's another 30 apps that allow people to connect with you. Everything from, Facebook Messenger to iMessage to text message to, Instagram DM, Twitter DM, LinkedIn InMail, regular email, heaven forbid email. Then not to mention you have Slack messages, and you have all of these notifications and messages going on. And one of the questions I seem to always get, and it comes around in the influencer marketing space, it comes around when people say they want to start a podcast, how do they get guests on their show? It comes around when they say, how do I get somebody to work with me and my brand? Or, one of my favorite things is like, how do I know when is the best time or the best way to get somebody to say yes to me? And, I'm not going to say that I am the greatest social selling expert in the world. Social selling, there's some good friends of mine that are really good with social selling. If you need tips on that area, Jack Kowakaski and Koka Sexton are two of the best that I know in the traditional social selling. But I have kind of this rule of thumb, and I have this way of kind of building out my database with people, and I wanted to share that with you guys, the community here of FOMO fans, because with the fear of missing out, with so many distractions and so much going on, when you're going to ask somebody to do something for you, you're asking them to, maybe contribute a quote to a blog post. Maybe you want them to share out your video. Maybe you want them to be a guest on your podcast. Maybe you want them to schedule a meeting with you so you can hard sell them on whatever your product or service is. This world that we're living in today, and I really want to put this, I want to stress this. We are so distracted and we have so much things happening and being sent to us inbound. If you do not stand out from the noise, if you do not follow kind of the guidance that I'm going to give you, you're not only going to just add to the noise, but I probably get 5 or 6 requests in my email box a week that I never open. And that might sound like I'm being a little bit, I'm not trying to be high or mighty here, but the email itself, the way it's written, the way that the title is written, and even the choice of using email for that type of ask, to me, shows to me that you don't listen, you don't care. And here's the first rule of thumb, and this is something I want to stress throughout this podcast episode, is that if you want somebody to care about you, if you want them to take time out of their day to read an email, to respond to an instant message, to reply to a text message, if you want them to spend their hard-earned time, which remember, time is the only thing we cannot buy more of, then you must show you care. You must care about them and make that known. And for people that are out there, that this sounds really basic, it sounds really easy, but I promise you, a majority of people get this wrong. When you're communicating with people and you want something out of them, you must communicate with how they want to be communicated with. So let me clarify this, right? So for me, I'm very connected. I am on every social channel that exists. So my notifications are slightly crazy. So I have, people that send me Twitter DMs. I have people that send me Skype messages, Instagram DM, LinkedIn InMail. But one of the things that, is really important to me is it's great when you can communicate on all of those channels. But if you want something from me, you probably need to communicate where I prefer being communicated with, right? And that doesn't mean that the conversation isn't going to lead to email. It doesn't mean the conversation isn't going to lead to a phone call. And oftentimes, if you do call me, that's actually one that surprises me a lot, and I end up picking up the phone. But this is something, the art of the ask, and I talk a lot about the influence that Gary Vaynerchuk had with me. If you haven't read Jab, 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 Right Hook by Gary Vaynerchuk, you're really missing out, because Gary highlights in that book, how do you get him to reply to things? How do you make people want to reply? How do you make people reply immediately or prioritize your reply? And the funny thing about this is, jab, 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 right hook. The essence of it is you have to give value, and then make an ask, right? And I would guess, if I had Gary on this show, that Gary would even agree with me that a lot of that in that book is still extremely important today, but he might actually add something before that first jab, or maybe after the last jab, before you make the right hook. And that's listening to that person, listening and personalizing your message. Now, a personalized message, for all of those that are out there, does not mean you use one of those ridiculous email services where it puts in, and says, "Hi, Brian," at the top of the email, and then the rest of it is, completely canned. Because a majority of people that use that kind of service, most of the time, it says, "Hello, insert name," right? And then they forget to use the right Boolean expression and bring in someone's name. But to bring this kind of full circle, what I'm talking about is, if you're following me on Twitter, let's use an example. You're following me on Twitter, and you're a brand, and you want me to share a blog post, or maybe you want me to write a guest blog post for your blog. The first thing you should not do, that I get a lot of brands that do, is they will follow me and they will send me an automatic DM that says, "Hey, Brian, we have a great blog on our website, and we would love for you to contribute. If you contribute to our blog, we give exposure. Some of the people that have written for our blog are blah, 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 blah." Because to me, if you want me to care about your blog, then you're not going to send me an automated canned message. If you value my time, if you value my experience, if you value what I can bring to your content and your brand, then guess what you're not going to do? You're not going to send me the exact same message word for word that you send everybody else. And that sounds really pompous, but I don't care if you're me. I don't care who you are. And I'm a little fish in a big pond, right? I'm not any better than anyone else. But what I want to highlight here, and what I want to really bring this home on, is that people have to realize that if you want to make an ask of me, first off, the amount of people that send me an email and they say in the email, Brian, man, we really love everything that you're talking about. We love all of the content. We've been following you for a long time, and we really would love for you to check out our blog. Well, here's the first thing that I do. I click on their name, and if they have their social accounts directly linked in their email, it makes it easier. And I click on Twitter, and I click on Instagram, and then I look, and guess what? A majority of them aren't even following me on social media. Now, I'm not high and mighty to believe you have to follow me, but if in your email, when you're making an ask from me, in that email, it says that you've been following me for a long time and that you value my content and it's been amazing, and you aren't even following me, not only are you a liar, but you're a fraud, and that email gets deleted. I don't care how big the brand is. I don't care how amazing you think you are. And to me, this happens weekly. And what's up, Vikki Taylor? Vikki Taylor in the house, one of my favorite, brightest people out there in the digital marketing space. And Vikki talks a lot about this as well. She is a must follow. I can't wait to get back across the pond to hang out with Vikki. She's watching here live on Facebook Live. But and Vikki said right there, right? Askers all the time with no relationship building at all. This is the basic concept, right? And we understand, right? Relationships are key, and people buy from people they like, and I've been preaching that people buy from people they can relate to. But here's the thing: is take it a step further. If you're making an ask for someone, if you're telling someone, if you're saying, I want you to read this blog, I want you to share this out, I want you to contribute, I want to get a time on your calendar, I want you to be a guest on you know what that says? It says, me, 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 me. Well, if you're making the ask, you better put in that email, what's in it for me, the person you're asking, right? And this to me is ridiculously overlooked. In this world where we're so distracted and we're so overwhelmed, if you can't take that little bit of time, then there's no way I'm going to reply. And then let's take it a step further. Inside of my contacts, in my CRM system, right? So, you can use a variety of tools. I recommend a tool called Nimble from my good friend Jon Ferrara, and I'll put a link to Nimble in the show notes of this episode. But Jon Ferrara and Nimble allows you to really organize your contacts. If you're a small business owner, if you're an entrepreneur. Now, of course, if you're using if you're a much bigger company, a much bigger brand, you might be using something like a Salesforce, or you might be managing your contacts through a different CRM system. But the art of making an ask, one of the things that I do, and I can pull it up on my phone right now on one of my phones, in the contact section of my phone, every single person that I connect with that I think of as a business relationship, in the notes section, I put in the notes section where they prefer to be communicated with. Let me repeat that. In the notes section for each one of my business contacts, I put in the notes section where they like to be communicated with. So my good friend Ted Rubin's a friend of mine. Ted Rubin likes the phone. He likes, he is a return on relationships guy. He likes the phone. So inside of his contact, it says notes and then it says phone. Well, then I have another friend, it's Tim McDonald. And Tim McDonald, and I communicate over Facebook Messenger. And yes, I have his email address. Yes, I will text message him. But guess what I do? When I want to get something out of him, I prioritize and make sure to use the communication tool that they prefer. Because here's the thing. If you communicate where I prefer to communicate at, the chance of you getting a yes is much higher, right? Much higher. And I see people here that are watching live and they're saying, smart. So this is a basic concept. Everybody can do this. And I know I always seem to only use my iPhone, but you can do this in Google Contacts. You can do this in your Gmail. Simply add in there. And, oftentimes what I will do is I'll say, they reached out to me on Twitter. And then underneath it, I'll say, business conversation on Skype. So therefore, I already know that I have their Skype email address, and I already know that they what their what the next step was. And I see someone, Jeremy Ryan Smith, just dropped in the comment section, what is my favorite form of communication? So I think for me, to the way that I kind of communicate, or the path to communication, for what I really prefer is I prefer someone to where you're engaging me, where you're finding me the most value. I prefer you to engage with me on that platform. So here's a great example. If you are on Twitter, and a lot of our conversation has been on Twitter, and you've been amplifying my content on Twitter, then you send me a Twitter DM, and I will gladly engage with you via Twitter DM. Now, don't send me a Twitter DM and say, what's your email address? Because now we're just wasting steps, right? Like, oh my goodness, like, send me a Twitter DM and say, hey, Brian, I would love to work with you on this project. I was wondering if I could send you some more information on it. I'll say, great, here's my email address. Send me it via email. Now, I will say my preferred communication path, I would say from a business perspective, is anything that is in a messenger form on my phone, right? So if you have my phone number, iMessage is my preferred platform. So number one way is text messaging me. So I prefer text messages, but I also love Facebook Messenger because Facebook Messenger is turned on my phone as well. So when you're thinking about making an ask, when you're asking somebody to do something, this is common sense that isn't very common. When someone's reaching out to me, let's say you connected with me on LinkedIn. This is a pet peeve of mine, right? You connected with me on LinkedIn. We've engaged on LinkedIn. You've commented on my LinkedIn comments. You've shared one of my LinkedIn posts. And then because we're connected on LinkedIn, you have my email address. Rather than sending me a message on LinkedIn InMail, which you can, you actually take the liberty and all of a sudden spam me via email. Right? And I'll take it a step further. I got 2 voicemails last week from people that got my phone number from either my website or from my LinkedIn account. And from there, they thought they had the right to disrupt me and call me on my phone and leave me a voicemail that was really a pitch. And the pitch went something like this. Hey, Brian, I know that you must be really busy as an entrepreneur and a successful person like yourself. At my company, what we do is we help brands like yourself leverage social media. Social media is growing. Now, this is the voicemail I'm listening to. And if anyone who knows who I am, one of the things that I do with brands is I work with them to use social media to tell their story. So not only did this person, this cold calling idiot, and I will call it a cold calling idiot because that's what this person was. They took the liberty to take my phone number publicly. They felt the right to then disrupt my life by calling my phone, then to leave me a voicemail and pitching me services that I provide my clients. You didn't even take the time to look at what I do as a business model. You didn't even take the time to read any of my posts or click on any of my websites or my links. And then you had the nerve to send me to call me. I mean, to me, that not only does this like drive me crazy, but guess what I did? And this person, I don't think they're listening because, well, if they listened to any of my content, they would have pitched me this, is I went back into LinkedIn and I unconnected with them. Because not only was I insulted that they felt that they had the right to then call me out of the blue and then pitch me services that I offer, but on top of that, they took for granted that we are connected on that platform. And this person, to me, was already providing value. What's up, Greg Walker? Thanks for jumping in. Thanks, Dave. Yes, to me, this is one of those things, and this is, the art of making an ask. And I'll tell you, I'm going to flip this the other way around. I'm going to tell you now how do I get somebody like Gary Vaynerchuk or Tony Robbins or Joey Coleman or Scott Stratton or all of these people that I look up to in the industry. If I wanted to get them on my show, this is how I would do it. And I'm gonna get ready, guys. I want you to take notes right now. This is the part where you're gonna be able to take action, because I've been complaining about how people reach out to me, but I'm gonna give you my secret sauce on how I get people to answer yes. And this is a very simple thing. So I use the notes feature on my phone, right? This is very high tech. Literally the iPhone notes features. And what I do is I say in my head, okay, I'm like, I want to get on this person's radar. So Greg Walker's in here. Greg Walker is the man. He's a good friend of mine. We've been connected on social for a long while. Hopefully I get to meet him sometime soon over out there in Ohio. But if I want to get on Greg Walker's radar, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add him to a private Twitter list, and I'm going to start monitoring what content he has. I'm going to then go to his website, and I'm going to look at what his recent blog topics are, and I'm going to look at if he has anything that he's excited to announce, right? And this is all public information, right? I don't have to be friends with Greg yet to make this. And I'm going to look at his website. I'm going to say, okay, ooh, guess what? He has a new version of his book coming out in 2 months. Okay, this is where the magic happens, right? A lot of people, well, this is common sense. Like, okay, well, when he has the new book coming out, I'm just going to wait till then. And then I'm going to ask him like, hey, you want to come promote your new book on my podcast? Well, yes, that might work. But here's the secret. Between now and that book release comes out, I'm going to be a big fan of Greg Walker's. I'm going to be a big fan of Greg's, and I'm going to support him. I'm going to amplify his content. I'm going to connect. I'm going to comment where I can add value to things that he's doing. And the reason I'm doing that is there's twofold, right? First of all, I want to be top of mind. I don't want to be the person that makes the ask and be like, man, I don't even remember how that person got my email. The other thing that I'm going to do is maybe I'm not sure where Greg prefers to be communicated with. So I'm going to connect with him on LinkedIn. I'm going to reply to a comment on LinkedIn. I'm going to retweet to him on Twitter, right? Oh, my buddy Ted Rubin just jumped in here right now. And Ted, who's now listening live, I just used Ted as a reference. And here's the thing. When you want to get something from somebody, the best time to do so is when they have something to pitch. They have a brand new book out. They're launching a new podcast. Maybe they have a new product. Maybe they have a new online course. Maybe they're excited because they're going to go speak at this big event and they want some amplification. But here's the secret recipe to make this all work. You need to build that relationship between now and that big release date. Because guess what? If you don't build the relationship between now and then, if you're not investing in having conversations with them, if you're not showing you care before you want them to care about you, when you make that ask, when they have a new book coming out or a new something coming down, you fall into the same ecosystem as everybody else. And whenever I'm going to save up my asks, and I'm going to get to the save up the ask part in a second, right? When I'm going to get to my saving up your asks question, when I'm going to use that right hook, I'm going to finally cash in my social equity. I'm going to make sure that I give the best possible way without question to get a yes answer, right? And I think for so many people, here's the crazy part is you do the research. You understand that they have something coming out. You wait until they do it, but what are you doing between now and then? And I think for so many people, you miss the opportunity to build that relationship, make that relationship stronger so that when you do make that right hook, it is of value. And the other thing I'm going to put out there, and this is something, a couple episodes ago, I went into a little bit of song, and I said RESPECT, right? Respect. For me, respecting the value and the weight of that ask is so underestimated. To me, this is something that drives me crazy. I will have people that spend 6 months, right, waiting to make an ask. They make an ask from me. They say, Brian, we would love for you to contribute to our blog post. Brian, we would love you to be a guest on our podcast. And because they did it the right way, I say yes, right? And then I go on their podcast. I hit it out of the park because, I like to talk and, this is my preferred method of delivering a story. And then afterwards, I share it out. And this is the part that people mess up a lot as well. Within that next 2 weeks, I get 2 more emails of them asking me to do something else. Asking me to, hey, can you share my blog post? Hey, you were great on my podcast. Any chance you want to watch my video and share it out to your community? Do you know what I feel like right then? You know what I feel like? I feel like that you used me. I feel like you got what you wanted, the big ask out of the way, and now you don't care that if you ruin this relationship. And I can tell you this is something that really, really bothers me, to the nth degree. Just because you got somebody to say yes to you, it actually now is you should put more weight on yourself and say, I now need to value that person's time even more. I've spent, and I was at a Dell event this past week. I spent 2 years, which might have been a little too long in my book. I spent 2 years amplifying, celebrating, connecting with Dell employees, broadcasting certain things, all of that waiting to a time where I felt I could get the best chance to get a yes, but also waiting to the time that I felt was most valuable, that I could actually make that right hook. I could actually go in for something to get something that I want. And to me, this is something that without question is missed out, right? And I know that Ted just said, forget the art of the ask, the art of the relationship. And here's the truth of this. We all are asking people for time. Anyone, I don't care. You say, hey, I want to pick your brain. How many people get those messages? I know if you guys are listening to this right now, I can guarantee you that a majority of you are saying you get those messages. Hey, I want to pick your brain. What's up, Haley Maloney? I got to hang out with Haley at my best friend's wedding this weekend in Virginia Beach and got to catch up. Haley and I graduated same high school, and Haley's doing some amazing things in the fitness space using Facebook Live. So I love to see that Haley's in here, and Victoria Taylor and Ted and Matt, and I see a bunch of people commenting here. And Haley's comment was, I love this. It can be applied in so many areas of our life. And that's the truth, right? I think everybody, like building relationships, and I say this a lot, I strategically build relationships a lot of times, right? When I will put somebody on my radar, like here's a good example. And this is a real life one, and I have this one going on right now, and you guys are gonna be interested. So I want to speak at the main stage of South by Southwest this year. I want to be on the main stage, right? I've spoken at South by Southwest 4 years in a row, but I want to be on the main stage, right? And one of the things that I want to do with that is there are two brands that I know, two of my brands that I've supported that I know they have a spot on the main stage of South by Southwest. So right now in my Twitter feed, I have a private Twitter list with only the people that work for that company and the two decision makers of that brand. I have them in their own Twitter list, and I'm amplifying their tweets. I'm connecting with them on Twitter. When I go on LinkedIn, they're people's accounts that I'm following, because guess what? I'm gonna keep that relationship not only top of mind, but I'm gonna show them. I'm gonna make sure that they see me, that I'm still what I'm doing. I'm gonna make sure that they're understanding what I'm looking for. And then what my plan is the first week of November, and I have this on my calendar. So here's another tip for those that are out there. If you wanna strategically make an ask at the right time, put it on your calendar. Like making an ask is that important to me. I value people's time at such a high level that if I'm going to disrupt you, if I'm going to send you an email, I'm going to call you, I'm going to send you a text message if we are on that level of relationship, if I'm going to do that with me wanting something from you, and it can be as simple as, I want you to review this podcast, which I would love everybody that's listening to this to review this podcast in iTunes. But if I'm going to single you out, if I'm going to spend the time and use up my ask equity, I'm going to make sure to do it, and it's so important that it goes on my calendar. That's how much I prioritize this level of relationship and this level of making that ask, because I think it's something that we just take for granted. And it doesn't matter if it's asking your sister to do something or asking a friend to donate money. And what's up, Julia? I see Julia jumped in here as well, right? To me, this is something this is basic. And here, let's wrap I want to put a whole thing on this whole conversation. So what I do first is I engage with people on social, and I engage with them. If I get their business card, I add them to my LinkedIn contacts, and I send them a follow-up LinkedIn email. It says, hey, thanks for connecting with me in Austin, Texas. I hope you enjoyed my presentation. I'm glad that we're connected here on LinkedIn. Then I put in their contact where we communicated at, right? And then if all of a sudden we start having a great conversation, we become Facebook friends, and all of a sudden as Facebook friends, they send me a Facebook message, and I realize that they prefer to be communicated with on Facebook Messenger. I go into that contact and I say Facebook Messenger is their preferred way of getting contacted with, right? And then I'm like, ooh, man, I remember now this person has connections with that one brand that I want to work with in Austin, Texas. Okay, well, when did I want to work with them? Okay, I want to work with them in the summer of next year. So I want to stay on that person's radar between now and let's say January, February. I want to make the ask in January and February. So then I go to their website and I look on their website and see if they have anything big being announced at that time frame or anything going on. If they don't, what I usually do is on my calendar, I put a calendar in, I block off on my calendar a month from today, and it says, check up on Eric before the Austin event, see if he's updated anything that he has going on, right? To me, this is one of those things where just because when I look at your website or I look at your social digital footprint, even if you don't have something that you have going on right now, between now and my ask, something might come up. And so I try to check back in every 30 days. And the reason that this topic came up is on my calendar today, two things that I had on my calendar today were two different people that I wanted to reach out to, and I plan on making an ask to in this month of October, but I haven't figured out the perfect timing yet. So on my calendar invite, it literally said, and I'll read here, let me see what the exact one is. So on this calendar invite, it simply says, the first one says, make sure to stay updated on what Mike has in the news. And the other one says, what's Ray up to lately? Verify if there's anything that I can help him with. Do you see what that was, right? Not only being, here it is, strategic rather than impulsive. And here's the thing. Sometimes impulsive comes off and you get a successful ask. But the key is making your ask look like it was impulsive or at the right time, not making it look and sound strategic, but knowing that it was strategic, right? The amount of people that will tell me, and this is another thing that really annoys me, right? I'll have someone that sends me an email and says, Brian, I've been following you for all of these months. Here are two of my favorite blog posts of yours. Well, the interesting thing about that is I know that you just went to my website and picked two random blog posts. What I would rather you say is like, hey, Brian, I've been following you for a couple of months. I love that you launched your new podcast. Some of those topics seem really interesting. I also read one of the things on your pod. Like, not only don't tell me what of my content you've actually connected with, tell me why it connected with you, right? Because this is building relationship, but this is really what you're doing, what you're selling me when you're making an ask. And maybe that's how I'm going to wrap a bow on this episode. And I love that I have a big live audience. So thank you everybody on Facebook Live for watching. I do broadcast this every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So you guys can tune in and watch the live podcast recording. But here's the thing that I want people to realize when you're prioritizing is don't underestimate the value of an ask. Don't overuse your asks. And I will do this. I have some really good friends of mine that will literally ping me twice a week. Brian, can you share this out? Brian, can you do me a favor and get me added to this group? Brian, I tagged you in this post. Why didn't you share it? I don't care how good of a friend you are. I don't care if and people that know me will know this across the board. If I'm going to take time to message you and have you disrupted and have you consuming something on my behalf, it's going to be worth it, and I'm not going to overuse it. I think right now we're having two problems. The two main problems that people have today is that they connect with you on LinkedIn and they immediately spam you with a canned message, right? We undervalue the time it takes to build a relationship. That's the first thing that we do wrong. The second thing that we do wrong is that once we build a relationship, we overestimate how much equity we have in making continual asks. And I'll tell you what, brands do this just as much as influencers and leaders. I have numerous brands that I will support all the time. I will support. They've never paid me a penny, but they've supported me. They've been a part of my content. I like their content. And about once a month or so, they'll send me a message and it's like, hey, Brian, I'm not sure if you saw this blog post, but if you like it, feel free to share it out to your audience, and I will share it every time I read it. But here's the thing. When that brand all of a sudden goes from asking me once a month to once a week to then giving me the worst emails ever right now, the worst email I believe ever is someone that forwards their own email, and then in the email title says, just bumping this up to the top to see that you read it, or just in case you missed this, Brian. Like you're so pompous that you think that I must have just glanced over and missed your email, that you then are going to disrupt me a second time because you are so important that your email didn't get the reply that it's needed. And if you've built up a relationship with me, you probably do need to email me twice, right? Like if you've never built a relationship with me and you dare to make an ask via email, and then a week later send me a forwarded email that says, just in case you missed this, I want to make sure that it gets your time. And the best one, today I got one that said, this is my third attempt, Brian. I'm guessing that since you haven't taken the time to respond to this, that this isn't of value to you. News break. Yes, you are correct. And you know what? The fact that you had to email me a third time about it to make yourself known and feel special and then waste my time again. Not only do I not reply to that email, I now hit spam so that your email doesn't even go into my inbox the next time you send me an email. And this sounds harsh, and I might sound a little bit fired up or a lot fired up, but you know what? People's time is so damn important. And I think you cannot be a solopreneur and work by yourself. You must be able to cash in on your community. One of these things I've said for a long time is you want to make sure that you're building an actionable community, right? Influence. There's a difference between someone that says they're influential and someone that can prove that they're influential. Being influential means that you have trust with your audience, that when you ask them to do something or you are doing something, it inspires them to take action. Take action. Let's repeat that, right? I inspire you to take action. I mean, the real truth of it is, if you support me, if you share out my blog post, if you go into my podcast and you write me a review of my podcast, and then you share out some of my content, more oftentimes than not, guess what I do? I will go onto your site, I will go onto your content, I will start sharing it, and I will ask you if there's anything I can do for you. How cool is that? That's probably the coolest way of making this whole thing work, right? Let's flip this ask on the head. Why don't we start giving value so much to people and becoming so helpful to people that the person that you want to ask for something comes to you and makes the ask for it? That, to me, is the magic. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this episode. For me, this is something that I'm not only passionate about, but in this digital world where chaos is the new normal and everybody has something for everybody, hey, pick my brain. Hey, please share this out. Hey, can you take 10 minutes and get on my podcast? Hey, I just want 5 minutes of your time. Yeah, because any phone call I ever get on takes 5 minutes. I mean, I talk fast, but that doesn't mean I talk short. I just get a lot of information in a short amount of time. But here's the thing. If you value people's time, if you understand that we all have 24 hours in the day, it doesn't matter how rich you are, how poor you are, how influential you are, how many followers you have. I don't care how many followers, how many people. No matter who you are, we have 24 hours in the day. Respect people's time. Build a relationship, do it strategically so that when you're asking them that it's the best time for them because they want to celebrate something or they need your help, and you're doing it on the preferred channel that they want to do. I can tell you, if you want to get something from me, if you want to ask something from me, Brian Fanzo, iSocial Fans, the first place that you communicate with me better not be email. Did you hear that? Better not be email. Now, the second place you probably communicate with me is email, because I love using email for actionable, insights with my business. I use email a lot, but let's remember what I said. Your first communication with me better not be via email, because the way you got my email address more than likely was my business card, my LinkedIn profile, my website. Every one of my slide decks on SlideShare has it. I have it in the show notes of this podcast, fanzo@isocialfans.com. But guess what? If you're connected and you're sharing and you want to build a relationship with me where I'm having these conversations, then you can follow up via email and make an ask, hopefully at the right time, at the right place. My name is Brian Fanzo, better known as iSocial Fans. This is episode 52 in the books. Always excited to share these conversations with you guys. For you guys that are watching live on the live show, it's time for me to evoke a little bit of FOMO as I turn off the live broadcast, and I'm going to switch into a 5-minute rant sponsored by my good friends of iOgrapher. I'm wearing my iOgrapher hat right now as we're broadcasting this. And my 5-minute rant, which will be only available on the audio podcast that you guys can download on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, any of the podcaster apps. I'm going to actually give you guys three of my favorite tools that I use to manage this whole process of making these asks, as well as social listen, so that I know when your book's coming out, or oftentimes I know when you've got awarded something before you know it. I'm going to share those tools and those tips on the podcast only segment starting now.